Mary Gardner with Lap of Love, and I am on today to talk about the nose. Now, this may not be as cool as some of the other topics I've talked about, but believe it or not, a lot of people ask veterinarians, what is it with a dry nose? And I have been asked to answer a couple of like Dear Abbeys in magazines, and a common question is my dog or cat sick when they have a dry nose? And I've even had some families call us because they want to stop medications because they think it's causing a dry nose, and some other issues that we'll talk about the nose. So first off, I really wish the nose was the deciding factor of health in animals. But then again, us veterinarians would be out of a job if it was that easy. So in short, no, not really does a dry nose mean that your dog or cat may be sick. But before we get into what are some problems with the nose, I want to talk about a little bit anatomy, sciencey, wiancy stuff. But don't worry, it won't be too complicated because the nose is pretty simple. But what does the nose do? It technically traps air, as you know, and also scent molecules. And it shuttles those molecules up the nasal passages to the olfactory sensory neurons in your nose. So that's about as sciencey as we need to get. But those neurons, each of those little neurons have one receptor on each of those neurons. And then the receptor gets stimulated and a message gets sent to the brain to an area called the olfactory bulb. Again, not important, but it's a good part of the brain that will interpret that molecule and tell the pet or us what scent they are smelling. And so an interesting fact is that us humans have 30 million smell receptors. And so I want you to think for a second, if we have 30 million, what do you think a dog and a cat has? Because they are out there smelling everything, right? So have you ever gone for a walk and it takes twice as long because your dog is sniffing everything? Because they have a lot of smell receptors. And so dogs and cats have 150 to 300 million smell receptors. And in dogs, there are some breeds, like the hound dogs, that have 300 million smell receptors. So what is that? 5 times more than us? It's crazy. So they have a much more attuned sense of smell than we do. And I'd like to dedicate a moment to my poor sister-in-law, Valerie, who actually does not have the sense of smell at all. And then a big question is, can she taste, right? And so interesting, she can actually still taste some things. And we'll get to taste and smell in a little bit. So if that helps you kind of understand the scent molecules and how they travel to the brain and what it activates. So what things can go wrong with your pet if they have a dry nose or if some other things that are changing? So the reason why a dog's and cat's nose is wet is it actually helps trap the scent odors in the air. So it aids in that scenting process. And you'll see that if some dogs get dry noses, they may lick their nose a little bit more. But this is just like you or I getting chapped lips. It doesn't mean that they're sick, although it can cause some discomfort when it gets really bad. And I've seen some dogs with very cracked noses, and there's some products out there that can help, like nose butter, and we'll put a link in here to nose butter, and it's just like almost like a chapstick, and you just can rub it on your dog's nose. So if you see those dogs that have really dry noses, that's something that you could apply super easy to your pet, and it will help. And I've actually used it on my own dog, and she didn't mind it at all. She'll lick a little bit, but it seemed to help her a lot. Now, so the dry nose. Another thing that could happen to our pets' noses is that they get a lot of what we call hyperkeratosis. It's a big science word for basically, a lot of production of the keratin of the nose, and it kind of looks like bark-like or like a tree growing outside of the side of your dog's nose. I don't see it too much in cats, but a lot in dogs. It's kind of like if you've ever seen the heels of some people and they're very thick. That's the same thing. And speaking of heels, the pads on the dog will usually also get that hyperkeratosis. So there are some diseases like lupus and some other things that actually will, you'll see signs of that hyperkeratosis. So you definitely want to see your doctor to make sure that they don't have something more serious, or it just may be in old age stuff grows and it's kind of creepy looking, but it doesn't mean that they're sick. And sometimes we could even do a little laser therapy to help reduce any of those discomfort that they may be feeling, because sometimes they may, it may get aggravated and they rub their nose or something like that. So now another thing that happens to the nose is that they lose their pigmentation. So we call it hypopigmentation. Now my girl, who's an angel now, oh, she's back there, but up close, she had a great, I did that fast, a great black nose. And when she was about 11, she started to lose the pigment in her nose, and it started to just look tan and blotchy in a lot of places. This meant nothing health-wise, just like gray hair, but it bothered me to see that. Now, she's a white dog, so I never saw a gray muzzle on her, but I saw her nose change, and that made me sad because I knew that she was getting older and my time was getting limited. So it was really more of my mental issues, just like my gray hair is my mental issues, so was her de-blacking of her nose. All right, so some other problems of the nose, and this is definitely more serious, is tumors, so cancer of the nose. And this is what I really want owners to understand and be on the lookout for. So the nose, in dogs, we see a lot of nasal adenocarcinoma. In cats, we see a lot of squamous cell carcinoma, and that's because of sun exposure. I live here in South Florida, and there's a lot of sun exposure. So we have to be mindful of the cancers that these guys can get in their nose, and we may not even notice it. But what you want to look out for is if there's an odor coming from their nose. Now, you may actually smell some odor from their mouth because they usually have really bad teeth. Oh my goodness, I'm seeing somebody else. Somebody wrote that they had staph in the hyperkeratosis on the pad. Yeah, thank you so much, Tyler. What was I talking about? The tumors. So you might see some discharge. You might see some blood dripping from their nose. And then what you might even notice is the shape. So if you can imagine a tumor, the shape of the nose may change. And it may even be the shape of the eye. I had this one dog that had a nasal tumor, but it actually was pushing the eyeball out a little bit. It made the eye bulge. So it is definitely important that if you see a lot of discharge from your pet's nose, blood, smell, or a change in their face structure, to go see your veterinarian to see if there's something a little bit more serious. And when anything is caught early, it is so much easier to treat. And there's been a lot of success, so much success with some of the therapies that we have. And so I would definitely encourage you not just to think, oh, he's just getting old and he's got a drippy nose, just to go see your vet and get it checked out and make sure that there is nothing more serious going on, or that it is just some natural changes. So I got some notes here because there's some cool stuff I wanted to tell you guys about the scenting. And I won't forget about the taste. So another thing that our neurons do back there is that the taste of food will also get sent up in the back of the throat, up into the brain for smelling basically the foods also as you're eating them. So that's why a lot of people wonder about the taste buds, if you will, but it's just also the scent glands. And so if your pet is not eating some things, it might be because their scenting has decreased. And that can happen over time. Neurons, just due to oxidative damage or some other things, could just stop smelling as well. The good news is that they smell so well to begin with. However, it may actually decrease over time. So if your pet is not eating certain things, it may be because they need to have them warmed up, or other more yummy smelling things are put in there. And so, cats can be very finicky anyway. Dogs, they seem to eat anything until you want them to eat something, and then they decide no. So just some tips and tricks as to heating some food up or adding some gravies and things like that, just to help it smell better. But the super cool thing I wanted to tell you is that there was a study done once, and they had trained dogs that could sit in like a CT machine, which basically takes a picture of your brain, and they presented to these dogs different smells, and they had a familiar dog, an unfamiliar dog, a familiar person, and an unfamiliar person smell. And the smell that lit basically their reward or pleasure center of their brain the most was a familiar human smell. So they smell you and they basically get happy. So a third of the dog's brain is dedicated to scenting, and they really like it when they smell you. So if you're ever boarding your pet or you're leaving home for the day and they get a little bit anxious and you happen to put them in a smaller room or in a crate or something like that, give them a sweater of yours or a t-shirt or something that smells of their most favorite human, which could be everybody in the family. And that may help them actually feel a little bit better. So whenever I drop my dogs off, they get something of mine, and I ask the boarding facility to keep that with them. So the nose is super cool, and it's definitely not something to just shrug off that like, oh, it's just getting old and crusty. So we do have some diseases to look out for, but if we've ruled them out, the nose is not just the indication of sickness, but it can disrupt some of their scenting, which is so important. Now remember, they have other skills, so they can still hear and see, but they do rely a lot on their nose. So just some tips, like I said already, to give them if they start to decrease their smell. So I think that's it. That's all I had on my notes about the nose. And I hope everybody's staying safe and loving on their pets while they're all at home. Till next time, take care. Bye.